Well, it's good to be here in Tucker, Georgia, at the home of Buddy Pittard. Most of you know that Buddy was one of the owners of the Tucker Concrete Company, also known as Tucco. Buddy, please jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I think a history of the ready-mix industry in Atlanta is so interesting, and it is an old history, and a lot of people that we remembered from the old days need to be remembered for their contribution. And I'm so glad you're doing this. As for me, I was born at Georgia Baptist Hospital in December of 1941. I cannot believe that I'm 81 years old, but thank heavens I still have enough of my marbles to remember many of the things that happened in our industry. I married Mark Henderson in Tucker, Georgia in August of '64. Now that was really considered the country in Atlanta when that first happened. I had to drive all the way from Southwest DeKalb area through Clarkston and all. There was no outer perimeter, no way to get over here, so it was a long ride out here. But at any rate, I became part of the Henderson family in 1964. And how I got involved with Tucker Concrete, I went to work for Tucco in 1965, you know, you cannot mention Tucker Concrete or Tucco without mentioning Mark Henderson. He was my father-in-law. He was 49 years old and was the maintenance foreman at General Motors in Doraville. Had a very good life. Didn't need to take a chance and get into a business, and was not supported by his family and friends in Tucker, but he was a master welder, a tremendous mechanic, and knew so much about the construction business that he was tempted to enter the ready-mix business because Whitley Concrete in Decatur was the only way builders in Tucker could get concrete. And Whitley wouldn't send trucks out except Monday and Tuesday. And if you didn't get your concrete then, you didn't get it till the next week. So all of the builders, of course, met at Matthew's Cafeteria all the time in Tucker, and they would tell Mr. Henderson these stories about how they couldn't get concrete and so forth and so on. So, at the ripe old age of 49, he invested everything he had and hand-built his first concrete plant in Tucker, and through David Chestnut's dad, Mr. Chestnut was on the board of the Brookhaven Trust Company, Brookhaven Bank, and he loaned Mr. Henderson the money to buy his first 2 trucks. Well, on the first day Mr. Henderson was in business, the driver turned one of his trucks over. So he had to go back to Uncle Dave Chestnut and ask for another little bit of money to buy another truck, so at least he would have 2. And but survived that tragedy. And by 1965, when I came on the scene, he had already been in business about 5 years, and it looked like he was going to be successful, but people still had their doubts even then. But he was just such a wonderful guy, and the main guy in the world that helped me get involved in what I never had considered in my life, the concrete industry. But it was not always fun. Now, Mr. Henderson believed in working maybe 100 hours a week. he would think that's a normal week. Night and day, it didn't matter. And building things and repairing things and just knowing what he was doing on that side of the business, he really established a pretty good business by the time I had gone to work for him.
Well, Buddy, that's an incredible story, an incredible introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about what you remember as some of the really big challenges that you faced back in the day? What were those big challenges?
in the early goings, of course, just establishing a business and learning all the things that Mr. Henderson had to learn and all of us had to learn at the early stages, those were challenges, of course. But at some point, Williams Brothers Concrete came into existence in the 60s. And I'm remembering the story now. This is just what was handed down to me. Atlas Cement wanted to get into the ready-mix people and sell ready-mix in Atlanta and had not been doing very good, had not been selling much cement. So it was told to me that they wanted to back somebody in the concrete business. They wanted to guarantee payment of any loans that we would need. And Mr. Henderson himself told me they came to him and asked him if he wanted to do it. But Mr. Henderson was a one-plant man. He did not want other plants where he couldn't see exactly where every employee was and everything like that. So he just really wasn't interested in expanding anything other than the Tucker plant. He didn't care how big that got, but he didn't want to go start other plants and so forth. So it was my understanding that they went to the Williams brothers, who were in the lumber business at that time, well, many businesses, and that the Williams just thought it was a good idea to get into the concrete industry. So I think it was the trust company that backed them, and they bought trucks, every truck they could find. They opened plants. They moved fast. I remember that they would buy automatic transmissions so anybody could drive the truck. That was back before CDLs and all that business. And so they just did anything they could do to expand as fast as they could. Very, very wise moves as you look back in the old days and all the things that they did to become the dominant concrete company in Atlanta. So now Williams was always a challenge, but prior to them selling out to Blue Circle, they left room for the little guy also. Mr. Henderson was on the board with John Williams, and they had a group that got together, and they allowed each other to make a living. I mean, it was competitive. I mean, now, if Williams Brothers wanted a job and they were bidding the job, I mean, you probably weren't going to get it, but we were pretty much concerned with the small ready-mix concrete desires of all the residential people in the area. And so, but Williams ended up with having the first concrete plant that had the automated computerized weigh bins, where you could prove how much stone and sand and everything went into each mint. So they got all the MARTA work. Somehow or another, it became the law of buying MARTA concrete that you had to have one of those computers or you couldn't sell concrete to them. So they got, that was one of their biggest increases in volume, was when they did all of the MARTA work all the way around Atlanta. And so they were much of a challenge, but I'm just saying they were another competitor. But they, you know, I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying that in those days, they allowed us all to make a living, which we did real well until right up to the point where Blue Circle bought them out. And at that point, pricing got really important, and we kind of got left out of a lot of commercial work. But we did do a big portion of the concrete barrier wall around 285 that was put in to save lives. And we're proud, I think all of us in the concrete industry can be proud of those barrier walls. I don't know how many thousands of lives we have saved from people who couldn't get their vehicles when they got into a wreck. They couldn't get them into the oncoming lanes. And there's just no way of telling. That was the big problem with expressways, was wrecks that got over in the oncoming lanes, and that solved that problem. We built a big share of them, and then Williams Brothers took over most. I think it was Ackerman Construction Company that first came in with the slip form machine that poured those barrier walls. So at any rate, that really boosted us that we were able to pour all that. Then there was Gentry and Thompson. We got so many bridge jobs that it was just a real safe backup for the volume that you needed to make money in the concrete industry. Gentry and Thompson being a main one, and then Patilla Construction Company was in our area, and Dan Patilla was the foreman of pouring concrete, and him and Mr. Henderson would meet out on those jobs at 4 a.m. and they would argue till the job was completed and then they'd go back and do another job, and Dan and Mr. Henderson would argue till those were over, you know, each of them wanting to put in the trucks in a certain place and so forth. That's just a part of his life which I thought was really funny, and we appreciated the Patillas. And we had their business for a long time. Eventually, Dan retired and so forth, and things changed. But at any rate, it was a wonderful association in the area.
Buddy, can you tell us a little bit about, talked a little bit about some of the challenges, but could you tell us about the things that were really enjoyable to you? What was, from, you know, in the days of when you had your business, what did you enjoy most about the ready-mix business?
Well, as far as I'm personally concerned about it, it was the family. Mr. Henderson's son was president of the company. Mr. Henderson kind of technically retired in 78, and Robert took it over from 78 to 88. And then I took it over in 88, and we had nephews and sons and daughters and people that worked for Tucco that just had tremendous skill and ability. All they needed to do was be turned loose. We went from one plant to 12 plants by the time that Tucco was sold to Vulcan Materials. We had 305 employees and did $68 million in business the best year that we had. I really enjoyed that part of it. I actually don't like to take credit for the tremendous growth that we had, but that family could do so many things. They never failed. You just give them a job and they could do it. All the complications that came with having 12 plants, and I know Bill was a big proponent of the central dispatch, and I think that carried over to Vulcan when they bought Tucco, that they did central dispatch. We never did. We always, you know, felt like that they needed a one-on-one person. You know, they could ask for Joe at whatever plant it was, and so we were kind of doing business the way we did for small business. And it was really enjoyable to grow Tucco. Actually, in those 15 years before the downturn, we never could make a mistake. I mean, everywhere we built a plant, it took off. All the demand for concrete was so huge all over. Everywhere north of I-20, we pretty much had a plant that could get there. And seeing all that happen and being able to manage a business that big with my son and two nephews and a nephew-in-law and all the people that helped us at Tucco, we were able to grow. And I think one of the greatest compliments I ever heard about Tucco was somebody at Thomas Concrete said, "Oh, we've let them get too big." So, which now I guess they're the biggest in Atlanta. But and congratulations to them. Bill, I wanted to especially mention Tony Cape, who became our general manager almost all the time that I was there. What a great person. He helped me with my walk in life, and he helped me run that business, and I just give an awful lot of credit to him for our success. And Tony Cape, he is presently working for Thomas up in South Carolina, and just a wonderful guy. And really was had a big impact on Tucco and with the Georgia Concrete and Products Association. But anyway, that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed the family and good grief, all the people in the business. I became a member of the Concrete and Products Association so I could get the credit reports. I was the credit manager for Tucco the whole time I was there, and a very bad job, very tough job when you got that many customers. You know, we had a lot of small customers. So we just didn't have a chain where the money was automatically coming in. It was pretty much a struggle every month. And the association, we would get together and do all the things that were legal in those days that you could about conversing about credit. And we knew from each other who we could work with and who we couldn't. And so really that part of the business stayed pretty much in control while we were growing, which is a dangerous part of the ready-mix business there was in those days. So I don't know if Bill and I want to try to mention some names, but there are so many of them. If you'll remember the old Consolidated Quarries that used to sell us rock, and Davidson Mineral Properties. That's where we bought most of our rock and sand, was from those two companies. Then we bought from Vulcan later, and all those people, Charlie Titshaw, I don't know anybody in the ready-mix business then didn't know Charlie. I mean, he was really just a concrete guy, and we all loved him. And there was a lady that called on us from him. I think her first name was Madge. I'm not sure, but she was wonderful. And we had all the cement companies, and I know I'm leaving a lot of people out. When you talk about the cement companies, we started out more or less buying most everything from Penn-Dixie, way back before Penn-Dixie was taken over. And then we bought a good bit from National Cement in the beginning, and that was Herb Bremer, who called on us from National. Now, Herb is a real old-timer. Long time ago, we used to have a lot of fun when he'd take us to lunch. The road wasn't paved between us and Matthew's Cafeteria, and Herb had this idea: the faster he went, the smoother the ride was. And it was a dirt road. And we would bounce off that top of that car. I had a lot of fun with Herb going up to Matthew's. But that's just one example of the many people I should mention. And, of course, you know, you got to work hand in hand with your material supplier, and getting to know those guys personally was great. And there was a great guy with Vulcan that I know all of you remember, Phil Thatch, and used to call on us and take us to play golf and such things as that. And Phil was just a wonderful guy, and sold us a lot of stone, and was really close with Robert. And, of course, Robert passed on this past April, and we're sad he's gone. He died at a young age, which I think was 85, I think, something like that. And so we'll all miss Robert, and Phil had already predeceased him, so we missed Phil and Robert. And then you got a lot of the people that were in the credit association with us, and I did serve as the president of the Georgia Concrete Products Association one term, and but I was so tied up with trying to make a concrete company a national company. I had the rights from Home Depot to provide all concrete requested through Home Depot. And I had already started in Georgia and was doing Alabama and was about to go into Texas when I realized a fatal flaw, which I had not considered. I owned the rights to the phone number 1-800-CONCRETE, and we had the contract with Home Depot. So we got inundated with COD type work, where now we're not doing business with a builder or we're not doing business with somebody that knows something about concrete. You're doing business with a housewife. And these sort of things, it was kind of like trying to herd cats. I mean, we never could prove, make our product acceptable to the customers anymore because they weren't builders anymore. So anyway, that fatal flaw kind of made itself known after I'd been doing it about 2 or 3 years and was just fixing to kind of launch a national business. But we pulled out of that soon after we realized that there's no way to satisfy the retail industry in that business. So anybody else wants to try it, y'all go right ahead.
Well, it's funny, Buddy, that you mentioned 1-800-Concrete. I'd forgotten all about it. You may not remember that we at Fulton, we jumped in and we worked with you guys on that. And I don't remember a lot about it, but I do remember the challenges of that COD work. It can be very frustrating. But well, let me ask you. Let's change gears just a little bit. You talked a little bit about the association, but talk a little bit more about back then it was Georgia Concrete and Products Association. Of course, in 2000, I think it was in 13 or 14, we changed to the Georgia Ready Mix Concrete Association. But in any case, talk a little bit about your fond memories of the association, the things that really were important to you and how it was helpful to you. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, that was a big part of our story, a big part of my story in the ready mix industry. Anyway, Sam Morris, yes, Sam was the association when I was in it, and she did almost anything, arranged all the conventions and everything, and it became a important part of our business because it allowed you to have contact with other ready-mix companies. I mean, we were really pretty competitive with each other and didn't know what we should tell each other and so forth and so on. So the association bridges that gap for you. It allows you to, share your business and learn from other people that are producers. And it was a wonderful thing for us. And we joined way back when. I can't even remember when we did join. Probably it was in the early 70s, I'm guessing. But Sam was there, and we had every ready-mix guy got to be president every so often. And, of course, during my presidency, I was trying to launch that during 1-800-Concrete, and I was kind of diverted. But at any rate, I don't think I did too bad a job. But it was the best thing I can say about the Georgia Concrete Products Association and what it was then and what it is now is the amount of help it can give you in so many ways you don't know about. You just don't think, well, good grief, they can get me a test on this thing. And actually, the Concrete Products Association is what helped us get through the new laws that were passed on all of the things that had to do with employee safety and all that. And we were allowed to conform to a general rule in the Georgia legislature that we had to do this, that, and the other. And we could do those things, but some of the things that the new EPA required were just impossible. But we got them to accept the way that the association had presented it, and that was the biggest savings that we had. It helped us all get through that transitional period there. But the association really is only as good as its members, and we need to support it, and we need to get in there and send our people over there to meet with them and find out what they can do, because it'll surprise you what they can do.
Well, thank you, Buddy, for that. And before we finish up here, I'm curious to hear from you a little bit about what have you been doing in these years since you sold your company. Tell us a little bit about have you spent your time and what's been going on in your life?
Well, if I can, I'd like to quickly go on record as to what happened to Tucco, why we sold the company. I intended to work forever. Everybody in the family intended to work forever. I didn't want to retire. But Bill Clinton, in his wisdom, decided that everybody that applied for a mortgage to buy a house should be given one, whether they qualify or not. And so through the FDIC and so forth, he caused the savings and loans to have to take every loan that was applied to them, regardless of whether the person could pay for the loan or not. That loaded all the savings and loans up with bad loans. You know, that's the trouble with trying to be an idealist and do something. I mean, it was a good idea as far as it went, but nobody, or at least the FDIC and so forth, didn't look forward to the consequences. The consequences of doing something outside of the capitalist system usually come back to really haunt you, and haunt you in a bad way. And as y'all know, all the savings and loans went out of business. What happened was the FDIC required them to reevaluate all of their loans, a thing called mark to market. And once the savings and loans did all of that, they had so many bad loans due to what the FDIC had made them do that they started shutting down. They started consolidating, and then they tried to stay alive with that. But as you know, there are very few savings and loans anymore. Well, that was the machinery for the residential builder. The residential builder would go to a savings and loan, get his acquisition money. Then he'd go to the savings and loan, get his development money. Then he'd go to the savings and loan, get his construction money. Then he would go to the savings and loan, get his permanent money. He had a way of building just a few houses and not having to finance everything himself. And the smaller builder in the United States suffered tremendously. We had so many customers, we saw maybe 100 of them just go out of business. And that's from a government trying to help people but not thinking about the consequences. So anyway, about 2004, the savings and loans collapsed. We hung on till 2010 and sold out in 2010, but basically our business, the residential business, has never recovered to the extent it was then. And so anyway, that's the reason that Tucco sold to Vulcan, which we were very thankful, and Vulcan and us got along real well, and I wish everybody that has some of our concrete plants well. So that's the end of the kind of the Tucco story. But to answer Bill here, what did you want, my fondest memories or?
Well, what have you been doing since?
What I've been doing.
What have you been up to? Spending your time.
I don't know if anybody's interested in that, but so anyway, in 2010, I was out of a job, and I got very involved with my church. I did a lot of service work. That took so much of my time. I even started my own prison ministry, and I just really kind of gave back, I guess is what you call it, to what God had blessed me with, and got very involved in it. I still teach Sunday school today, and I enjoy golf, played a lot of golf, and golf and my church, I guess, are pretty much the main things. My wife, Marcia, and I are still in very good health, and she's suffering a little bit, and I'm suffering a little bit, but we kind of got enough traveling for a while, so I think we're pretty much in the stage of family. We got 3 grandchildren and so forth and so on, but that's my personal story that I don't know any of you are interested in, but Bill wanted me to say something, so I did.
Well, Buddy, this has been a real treat. I got to tell you, I've really enjoyed this visit. And I'll say, I didn't say this to you earlier, I'll never forget the very first time I met you. I'd heard about you when I came to Atlanta in 2002, but I met you, I believe, the World of Concrete was in Orlando, of all places, in 2003 or 4, may have been 4, in any event, back then, and I met you there for the very first time. And it's so good to talk to you. We're so thankful for you and what you've done in our industry, and we just wish you the very best, my friend. Have a great week.
Thank you, and I appreciate you doing this, Bill. Like I say, we really need to protect our history and get it on record.